Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's always a nice time having you guys around every time I'm here. Yeah, so we'll be talking about national income accounting today. We've discussed national income accounting before, but as I want to do, whenever I find an interesting question on a particular concept, I usually, enjoy it. Okay, I enjoy it and I would like to pass that across. Like I said earlier, we've been treating national income accounting since this is 2021. So the last video that we did on national income accounting was in 2020, I think. Yeah, and this is July. Alright, this is July 2021. Okay, so we'll be talking about calculating. The actual topic is calculating GDP by income and expenditure approach. Now, what's national income accounting? Is just telling us the recordings of the income generated by every factor of production that a country owns. And when we are talking about that, we are talking about the people that the country owns, that is the workers in the country, not the workers of the country now, the citizens in the country, so whatever income that they generate from whatever work they are doing. And then we are talking about rent from factors of production that households have in a domestic economy. We are talking about several other things, individuals that own farms in the country, outside the country. Okay, I believe you get that. So the profits that these companies make, as long as they are of the citizens of a particular country, it is included in the national income of that country. So if I, as a Nigerian, well, let me say in Canada for example, and then I earn a certain income in a particular year, that is going to be included in my country's national income, which is Nigeria's national income for that particular year. Now, before we get to that, the first thing that we have to do is calculate GDP by income and expenditure approach. Now, there are actually three methods of calculating GDP. They're just to brush through them. The value-added approach, that is just talking about the amount of value added to a product as it passes through the stages of production. So from being a raw material to a semi-processed good to a processed good, and so on and so forth. And then we have the income approach, which is talking about every income earned by the factors of production that a country owns, okay, whether in that country or outside the country. And then there is also GDP calculation via expenditure approach. So calculating GDP via expenditure approach is just talking about summing up the total spending on the currently produced final goods and services. Okay, currently there are these goods that are produced in a certain year, and those goods have to be final. Alright, that they don't have to be intermediate goods. Yeah, so final goods and I believe you understand what intermediate goods are. Goods that are final output of some industries or some firms and happen to be inputs for some other firms. So you don't include the value of those ones. Anyway, when we have a question like this that's asking us to calculate the GDP via, okay, we have these items: net investment, depreciation, exports, imports, government purchases, consumption, net taxes on production, employee compensation, corporate profit, rental income, net interest, proprietors income, factor income from abroad. Okay, then we have to find GDP at market price with the expenditure approach. And second question says we find GDP at market price as well with the income approach. Then third is we should find the GNP and the NNP, that's the gross national product and the net national product. And the last is, given a statistical discrepancy of 10 billion naira, find the national income. So this is not a big problem. Now, what is net investment? Net investment is just talking about the actual capital stock in a country, okay, giving the investment in new capital stock and allowing for depreciation of old capital stock. That's net investment. And depreciation is just talking about the wear and tear of capital stock. Export is exports. Imports, what you are bringing to a country. Government purchases, what the government is buying. Consumption is like, it's more or less private domestic consumption. So consumption is the net taxes on, that's an indirect tax. All right. Then employee compensation, what you pay to employees, what employees get because they are working, okay, which include their wages, their salaries, their social, their wages, salaries, the social security benefits that their firms are paying, like keeping into an account for them. All of these benefits basically because people are working. So if you're not working, you don't get an employee compensation. Then corporate profits, which is talking about the income of corporations, incorporated firms. Rental income of individuals that own factors of production. Basically income of households, because it is assumed in economics that households are the owners of factors of production. Net interest The net interest briefly is divided into three. So net interest could be paid by it's just talking about interest paid, interest received. This difference between, okay, let me say difference between interest received and interest paid. So if a firm is lending out its money to another firm, the interest that is paid on that's interest received, then minus the firm itself, the interest it has to pay on loans that it has obtained, all right, to enable production. So that's interest paid. So when you take the difference, that gives you the net interest. Governments also pay interest, but government interest is not included in national income because it's basically on it's basically on debt. There's interest on bonds that are issued out by the government. So it's nothing new is being produced. All right, somebody's lending government money, government didn't produce anything, okay, and then has to pay this interest. The same thing with households. So there are some times that households don't just save in the real world. So there are times that individuals in the household take some loans, maybe mortgage loan, whatever like that, and they also have to pay interest on those ones. So we don't include that in the GDP. What we include is the net interest paid, net interest by firms, okay, because that of course involves new production of new goods and services. Now, proprietor's income is just talking about the income of unincorporated businesses. It's simply so proprietor's income. Yeah. Okay. Then you have factor income from abroad, which is talking about the income of the citizens of a country outside the country minus the payments made to other citizens, the payment made to citizens of other countries inside a country. Now, if to make this clearer, factor income from abroad is, let's use Nigeria and the US. Okay, if there is an individual in the US, okay, that is a Nigerian working in the US, and whatever income the person earns is income received from abroad for Nigeria. And then if there is a US citizen in Nigeria that is working, let's say Shell, alright, whatever income that the US citizen receives is income paid to foreigners. So when you take the difference, which is the one received by the Nigerian abroad minus the one paid to the US citizen in Nigeria, you then have the factor income from abroad, or called net factor payment sometimes, net factor payment. Okay, and it's not just talking about labor, for example, now, so it could be in terms of capital too. Okay, so if there's a Nigerian that owns capital abroad, and then there is a foreigner that owns capital in Nigeria, so the payments on all of these things, you take the net and all of that. There is at least a video on this item that discusses them a little bit deeper than I have discussed them, but because that is not primary stuff for today, so I've just given a quick revision on each of the items. Okay, now the total economy is divided into four components. Okay, you have the households, you have the firms, you have the government, and then you have let me call them the rest of the world. Now the sum of household and firms gives you the private sector, the government gives you the government sector, and the public sector rather, and then the rest of the world gives us the foreign sector. Okay, now calculating GDP via expenditure approach is the easiest. Okay, whenever you have a question like this, the problem usually is that students don't really understand how to calculate GDP via income approach. Okay, but whenever you have a question like this, the answer that you get for expenditure approach is likely the right answer, even though whatever you might be solving or whatever you might be trying to arrive at for the income approach is not may not be that clear, or the answer may not be similar to what you have here. Now, for expenditure approach, GDP is simply consumption, which is talking about the private consumption. Okay, consumption by everybody in the economy. Now, what you need to understand about consumption is that consumption isn't talking about just the consumption of domestically produced goods and services. I think I was mentioning private domestic consumption the other time. Okay, it's talking about in consumption now. For example, the shirts I'm wearing may not be produced in Nigeria, but it's also a part of consumption. So consumption is kind of bigger. So consumption is talking about domestically produced goods and services that households are demanding, and foreign produced goods that households are importing as well. Okay, so that's what you have in consumption. You have investments, C plus I, which is done by firms. You have the government, and then you have the rest of the world that is represented as NX, which is net export. Where net export is simply where I can just say where NX. So where NX is export minus import. So that's GDP via expenditure. We're talking about the spending on currently produce final goods and services. So we have X minus M. Okay, so this is gross domestic product. So we expect everything here to be gross consumption, gross investment, gross government spending, and then gross net exports. That means we are not allowing for depreciation. That's different between gross and net. So net is talking about gross minus depreciation. Okay, and net investment, for example, is what talks about the real amount of the capital stock that we have in an economy, because if allowed for gross investment, which is talking about the addition, okay, to the capital stock, and you've subtracted depreciation, is talking about the removal or the wear and tear of capital stock. So when you do the addition and then of new capital stock and then the reduction through wear and tear or depreciation, we have the actual capital stock in the economy. So what gives us an idea of what capital stock that we really have in the economy is not gross investment, it is net investment. Anyway, so here from the table we have from the items we have government, we have consumption to be 1552. Now one thing I must mention here, which I have mentioned in earlier videos, is that consumption is the biggest component of the GDP. Okay, so if you don't know, investment is the most volatile component of the GDP. Okay, which means it changes pretty fast. It's the one that changes it changes the fastest among all of these items. So that's what I mean. Now what is investment? Now look at it. What we have here is net investment. It is not gross investment. So that is something that you guys should really take note of. Now to get our gross investment, gross investment, I can call that GI. Okay, let me say gross investment minus depreciation, they give us net investment, right? Let me just call it net, since we have, let me call it net INT, since we have NI to represent national income. So this simply means that gross investment is your net investment, okay, plus depreciation. Okay, so that means what we have here, this investment that we have here, is the net investment that we have here, 264, plus depreciation, okay, then plus what is the government spending? So government purchases is 414, and the net export is talking about, what is export? Export is 300 minus 400. 300 minus 400. Sorry, I'm managing that. 300 minus 400, just no. Okay, so by the time we add this, so net export is basically negative because export is smaller than import. Okay, which is more money is going outside the country than is coming in terms of this. And this is what actually takes care of the consumption that is bigger than what is domestically produced in this place. And some of these, some of the goods and services produced by firms that is in investment are also exported. Not everything is consumed; they are exported out of the country for foreign consumers. Anyway, doing the addition of this, we have 1552 plus this. So when you do that, I believe you're following. Plus 264 plus 70, okay, plus 414 plus 300 minus 400. Okay, boom, we got the same thing, 2200. So this is 2200 billion naira, okay, because these values are in billions of naira. So this is right no matter what we do for the income approach. Now what is about the income approach here? So what are we going to do? You see, income approach is just how to get GDP via income approach is to sum up all the incomes that are generated by the factors of production that a country owns, which includes its people, basically, and what those people own, irrespective of whatever country that they are in. So by the time we sum up those incomes, we are not actually getting the GDP. Now I was talking about a Nigerian citizen in the US, for example, what the person is earning, we have to calculate it in Nigeria's national income because the person is obviously a Nigerian citizen. But what the person is producing, is it in Nigeria? No. The person is producing stuffs in the US. So which simply means that gross domestic product is talking about goods and services, final goods and services that are produced in a country, or newly final goods and services that are produced in a country at a particular period of time. Okay, so that means national income is not GDP. So how then do we get GDP from national income? Okay. When we sum up all the incomes, for example, get the national income. So let's do that first. So national income is simply let's start calculating all of the income. So we have what do you call it now? National income. So there's also something that I need to let us know here. Okay, but no problem. Okay, national income now. The difference between national income and net national product is statistical discrepancy. Okay, because net national product ought to be net national product is talking about everything that an economy owns, all right, minus the depreciation that is required. Okay, minus the depreciation that occurs in the country. Okay, and then there's something that could make the two of them not equal to the same thing, and that's what we call statistical discrepancy, which is talking about data measurement error. So in trying to collate all of this data here and there, so on and so forth, we kind of may have an error somewhere. Okay, so anyway, we have national income is simply equal to net national product, right, plus plus statistical discrepancy. Let me just leave it this way. Okay, and national income is basically, and NNP is going to be gross national product minus depreciation. Then we still have plus statistical discrepancy. But then we can also break GNP down. Okay, this is GNP is simply equal to your GDP, gross national product, plus net income from abroad, which is simply as net factor payment, and minus depreciation plus statistical discrepancy. So we can then see from it that we then have GDP in this calculation. But what we need to note about this question is that we did not have statistical discrepancy originally in this data. We're going to have it here in question D. Question D says, given the statistical discrepancy of 10 billion naira, find the national income. So now, the assumption in this place in question B is that statistical discrepancy is 0. Okay, because we just add that information in D. Alright, and that gives us, so we have NI, okay, equals GDP plus NFP minus depreciation, okay, plus 0. Anyway, now how do we get our NI? So let's start adding up all of the incomes. Okay, net investment is not an income, depreciation, nope. Net taxes on production, good. That is an income to the government. Okay, it's just talking about this indirect tax, right? So it's talking about the difference between the tax on production and then the subsidy that government also pays to enable production. So subsidy is like a negative tax. Okay, you understand? All right. So national income is then, so we add this guy. Where is it? This guy, which is 150. So we are trying to get national income now. I'm not using this formula. So we have 150. Okay, plus what else? Employee compensation is an income to workers. So 1513. What else do we have? Corporate profits is 204 plus 204, and then we have rental income, of course, which is income to owners of articles of production like land, etc. 232. And then we have net interest, of course, that's an income to some people that lends out money to enable production of firms. Then proprietor's income, which is 166 plus 166. So all of this will give us what? NI as well. Okay, now the value of this is going to be, now let's start adding up. 150 plus 1513 plus 204 plus 232 plus 120 plus 166. So what do you have? 2385. So we have 2385. We can then use this formula that has the GDP. We can then use that to get the GDP. So we have 2385, right? Because GDP that we don't know, plus we have net factor payments, okay, which is factor income from abroad, 255 minus depreciation, which is this, minus 70. Alright, so we have 2385 minus 255 plus 70 equals the gross domestic product. Okay, so when we do that, minus 255 plus 70. Yes! Yeah. So we have GDP equals 2,200. Yeah, simple. So this is GDP as market price. Now, you might also be asked to calculate GDP at basic price. So the difference between market price and basic price is market price is saying the points where the goods are sold already, and that's why we are having, indirect taxes are in the product, right? So, and that goes to the government. So that's why you have plus indirect tax minus subsidy paid to enable the production of those goods and services. Okay, if it were basic prices, it would have been the reverse. So that would have been plus subsidy minus indirect taxes. Okay, so in case you have to calculate GDP at basic prices, so you do the basic thing, the normal thing, but instead of having where is that tax? So instead of having where is tax here? Remind me, 150. So instead of having plus 150 here, so this is more or less a plus 150, so you'll be having a minus 150. And if the value of the subsidy we're given, so you add subsidy, okay, and subtract the indirect taxes, not direct taxes, please. And one other thing that I should let you know is retained earnings. Now, retained earnings is simply the income of corporations that are not distributed as dividends to their shareholders. Now, when you have retained earnings and corporate profit in the same data, it is just meant to confuse you, because retained earnings is kind of undistributed profit. Undistributed, is it distributed now or redistributed corporate profit? So once you have the corporate profit, it has already included the one that is distributed and the one that is not. Okay, so because someone like me could set a question like that for my students, you have retained earnings and then you still have corporate profit. So what you need to pick is a corporate profit and leave the retained earnings alone. Okay, because retained earnings is already a part of the corporate profit. Okay, or company profit or whatever it is. Now, what is GNP? I think we've already done that. Okay, which is C. So GNP is simply what is produced in the country, GDP plus net factor payments, basically. So, and that is, we have GDP to be 2,200 plus net factor payments is where is it? 255. 255, and this is going to give us 2,455 billion naira. Wow, this is a lot of money. Okay, now there is a gist here. GNP is greater than GDP in this particular question, which is trying to tell us that the income that Nigeria is generating from US is greater than what it is paying to US citizens in the country. Now, I'm just talking about US and Nigeria. So we could have more countries in the real world. There are more countries basically. Okay, Nigerian citizens could be scattered anywhere, and we could have different nationals scattered in Nigeria as well. Okay, it's just what we do for two people is what we do for several other people as well. Now, there are cases where income that are earned by Nigerians abroad is not equal or is lower than income that we pay, payments that we make, that the country makes. I'm saying we, like I'm the one making the payment. All right, so the payments that is made to foreigners in Nigeria for their factors of production. Okay, so in that particular case, you'll be having a GNP that will be lower than Nigeria's GDP. So if a question asks you, GNP is always greater than GDP, don't say yes. Okay, don't say yes. You don't know. Okay, in fact, it's basically false. Then you explain times when it is greater when net factor payment is positive. All right, and it is lower when net factor payment is negative. That kind of a thing. All right. Now D is now saying that okay, we calculate net national product here. So net national product is simply what has been produced by the factors of production owned by every Nigerian, wherever they are, minus the depreciation of the capital that Nigeria or Nigerians own all over the world. Okay, and this is going to be GNP is 2,455 minus what are depreciation, and depreciation is 70. Okay, so let's assume I don't know mathematics again, so let me use calculator to do that. Minus, is this mathematics or basic arithmetic? Okay, so this is 2385 billion naira. Okay, then the final question says we should find the national income given a statistical discrepancy of 10 billion. So NI now will be equal to your net national product plus the statistical discrepancy that we have now. Okay, and that is equal to 2385 billion naira, 2385 plus 10 billion, and that's going to give us 2395 billion naira. Yes. So I think so. With that, we are done with this fantastic question. So can you say it's really an interesting question? Okay, you are not gonna go like that. I know some of you may have questions. Okay, all you just have to do is to ask in the comment section. If you see the comment section though, and then if you don't have, there's going to be a WhatsApp link under this particular video. That is meant for you to buy the videos. Okay, so you can click on that and tell us whatever it is that you want to tell us from there. And for our students, of course, we're going to meet on WhatsApp, so you can ask whatever question you have. Okay, before then, let me ask you my own question. There's going to be an assignment for you. So I'm just going to change one or two data here, and then you calculate. Alright, you have your assignment on the board. Okay, so I've changed the data. Of course, this is not as long as the list here is not as long as the one that was used to solve the exercise. So we have investments as 2,000 billions. Okay, which is basically 2 trillion naira. Depreciation as 800 billion. Exports 700 billion. Imports 400 billion. Government purchases 1,500 billion. Consumption is 8,000 billion. Direct taxes is 1,200 billion. Employee compensation is 9,000 billions. Corporate profit is 2,000 billions. And then saving is 2,200 billion. So you have to obviously find the same thing, including a new question. So find A, GDP at market price with the expenditure approach. B, GDP at market price with the income approach. C, GNP and NNP. And D, given statistical discrepancy of 10 billion naira, find the national income. Then E says express consumption, investments, government spending, and net export as a percentage of GDP. I believe you know how to do that, right? I won't tell you. You should. You're an undergraduate, basically. So you should. Okay, but let me say at least. Okay. Alright. So see you in the next video. Thank you very much for your time. Bye.
Please like and subscribe.